Alright, we're getting ready to put our sensors in, and we got two of them. So this one up close, that's our temp sensor for the gauge, and the other one is going to hook to the ECU. And we may do something later for like fan control or something to turn the fan on and off based on temperature. So there's the parts, the tap's right next to them. So that small tap, we've got the drill bit loaded up, and we'll do the big one afterwards. So here's the pan, and you'll see I've got all this stuff marked off. Let me explain that real quick. So you see where the flange is, we can't put a sensor anywhere close to this flange, and here's why. So this is the back of the pan. We want the sensors in the back, partially for weight distribution and whatever. I think it's just, I think we got more room there. Let's hope I'm right. So that would be, this is the top of the trans, so this would be down here at the bottom. And here's what you'll note, if you look at a side view, you'll see that there's stuff poking out, like the valve body, wires, filter. So we can't just put something close to the flange when we thread the sensor in. Like say if we put it right here, it would run right into the valve body. There's hardly any gap at all to the valve body. So we measured all that and it came out to be about 1.1 inches. So that's where this line here came out, and we see we X'd off that space. You'll also note we X'd off where the bolts go. That way, you know, you could put a sensor here, but then when you try to get to that bolt, you might have to pull the sensor to get to the bolt. That would suck. So we X that off, and then this whole bottom here, that's essentially where the floor stops in the pan. So not that we could really use that because there's fins, but we X that off. And as you can see, that really leaves a much more narrow window of where these sensors could go. So now that we've got this marked, we know that pretty much one's going to go here and one's going to go there. And now the question is, where in this pan would we want to put them? Closer up high, closer down low. So for center of gravity, you'd want to keep them low. Now, if you think about what do you want to measure? Do you want to measure the highest temp recorded in the trans? Because if so, maybe putting them up closer to the top will be better. So the way this transmission works, this filter doesn't actually sit way recessed. This pan, I'm just kind of eyeballing it, but the pan bottom is like way back here. So you've got several inches, or at least a few inches, to the inlet of the filter. So you may have some fluid like kind of stagnate at the bottom of the pan. So having the sensor way close to the bottom might give you a lower reading, but it might be a false reading since you don't really have a lot of fluid flow down there since the filter is not in the bottom of the pan. That was a design decision that the company that builds this made. They even explained it to me. So, with all of this information, as much as that is for where to drill something, we're basically going to put one over here, and we're going to err on keeping the sensors closer to the top. That way, they'll hopefully get the most accurate temperature. Alright, so we said we're putting the sensors in the back of the trans, and we said it was for CG, or weight distribution, basically just trying to move weight down in the car and back in the car. But there's a couple more reasons that they should go in the back and not in the sides of the front. So look at your filter. This is the bottom of the trans right there, and this filter, if you kind of back up, you can see the inlet of the filter is mostly centered, but it's pulled to the back of the trans. Now why would they do that? Probably because the transmission sees peak load under full acceleration, which is typically done in forward, which causes the oil to go to the back of the trans. So it would make sense to have the inlet, the pickup tube or whatever, towards the rear of the pan. There's another reason. Fluid is also going to build up in the back, and any fluid flowing, say fluid that drips from the front or from the sides, is going to travel to the back and into this filter. So you'll have like the freshest moving fluid in this area. So probably like the ideal spot for the sensors would pretty much be like here and here. You'd want them as close to here as possible. That way they're kind of in the path of the flow going into that filter. So essentially that's what we're going to do. We're going to, you can see that middle bolt is kind of almost in the middle right there. So we're essentially going to stagger our two sensors. One's going to be here and one's going to be here. And we may even pick which one goes where based on this. But that's how we're going to do that. Alright, well, we got this all clamped up, so now everything's written upside down because this is how we clamped it to drill it. But that's what we're going to do. That's got them closer to the flange, closer to the filter, but within the safe zone. Here we go. Looks okay. down. Well, if you don't have a set of drill bits that goes to 1 inch, then you don't have a set of drill bits. Alright, so this one's 9/16. This bit might look a little undersized. This is going to be the pilot hole, because I'm kind of, that big bit has a crappy looking point on it. Whatever they call it, dead center. So we're going to give it a pilot. That should make drilling the next one a lot easier. Alright, bad ideas for 300. Drill with a 9/16 drill bit one-handed while you're filming, but YOLO. So we're not going full throttle on the trigger. Try and take it easy so if the bit hangs we can get out of it. And it hangs. There we go. Now we tap them. Okay, just kidding. So we're not going to tap them yet. We're going to clean all these chips off and oil the holes and just make sure everything looks good. Get our tap ready, then we'll tap these. See how these chips look? Oh Jesus. So you saw how big some of these chips were? That's what, whenever you're drilling stuff, it needs to be making chips. So if you just see like little dust coming off, you're not giving it enough pressure, or your drill bit's screwed up or something. Also, a brush works way better than a drill bit to brush chips off. So we're going to deburr these. Look how awesome that works. Just has a little bevel on it. Very nice. Alright, so here's how I tap things. I use a tap and a socket with a ratchet. I always thought that was just easier. I'm going to put a bunch of cutting fluid on the tap, and then should be good to go. No idea if it's more new things. One-handed tapping while filming. So when you're tapping stuff, you want to put some pressure so that it cuts, and then you also want to keep the tap straight. Normally I would be checking this to make sure I got it really straight. I think I am. Now it's getting easier to spin. So the thing with an MPT tap is you don't run these in all the way. If you do, your sensor will probably be loose. So I'm going to run it in some, probably stop and check it, but I kind of got a feeling that here or a little further. So now we're going to back this out, and we'll clean the hole with like brake parts cleaner, and then we'll throw the sensor in and just see how far it goes in before it starts to tighten up. Look at that. Brand new threads. Here's all the metal that came out to make those. Okay, actually air worked pretty good. Cheaper than brake parts cleaner. Now, we'll see how far the sensor goes in. It's already started to bind. It went in about 1.5 threads or so. So we're going to tap that a little bit further. Not too much, because we do want to tighten it up when it goes in. But that only went in like 1.5 threads. Alright, round 2. We tap those threads a little more. And we'll see how far this goes in. So 1 turn, 2, 3, 4, 4.5, and it's starting to bind up. That looks perfect. So we're gonna, that'll tighten up another turn or so with a wrench, and that'll be just right. So this one's done, just needs to be cleaned, and then we'll probably use RTV on these instead of Teflon, and then we'll assemble it, but we're gonna do the other hole next. So 1 down, 1 to go. Alright, so this is gonna be highly ambitious to do this one-handed in film, but we're just gonna go for it and see what happens. Worst case, I'll just buy a new pan. Yeah, so this one's a lot harder to turn. So when you do this, you don't want to just push on the wrench. Like, this is hard to turn right now. You got to be careful. You got to keep this tap straight. So ideally, you'd want your wrist to be like kind of right here, and then you twist and not really put a bending moment on it. But it's really hard to turn, so actually I'm going to have to stop filming because I don't want to screw this up. But yeah, you got to be careful when you do this. Don't want to mess your threads up. Alright, so these threads don't look nearly as good as the first one we did, and I remember why. One, I think this tap's kind of dull because I've used this thing 10,000 times. But the other is the tap drill for a 3/8 is not actually 9/16. It's, I don't know what it is, but it's not 9/16. I think it's a little bit smaller or something. But anyway, it's going to work, but I haven't even put the sensor in yet, but I'll be willing to bet that that's not going to be enough thread for this to go in. It's probably going to go like one turn or something. Yeah, not even a turn, that's it. It's already stuck, and look, there it backs out. So we still got a ways to go. So another little piece of advice, when you're putting a tap back in to keep threading, I always do this by hand. Because these taps are designed to cut threads, so if you just take a ratchet and start spinning it, the threads might be off, and instead of it getting stuck and not going, it'll just start cutting a new hole and mess up your original threads. So I always do it like that. Get it threaded, get it started, then, you know, use the wrench. Okay, so that's after round 2. About to see what we get this time. So starting here, half turn, 1, 1.5. It's already starting to bind. There's 2, about 2 1/4, and it's already binding up. You can see how many threads are poking out. So I don't know if this will work. Now there's rags under there. But anyway, that needs to be threaded some more. It's not going in very far. All right, round 3. And I've already thought that this might be the sensors. This is a Chinese sensor, so maybe they didn't cut the threads all that great. So that's 3.5, and it's binding. So we're gonna go with that. I know I can get another turn, maybe 2 if I need to, out of this. And I will look. I'm betting if you look, the sensor's probably poking in the pan fairly well right now. Oh yeah, that's gonna be fine. Once that's torqued another turn or 2, should be good to go.